What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Tuxie Boyo, and as I've recently gotten into doing, I want to start this video by asking you a question. Who is your favorite Star Wars character from each trilogy? Prequels, originals, and sequels. For me, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi for the prequels, Han Solo for the original trilogy, and Poe Dameron for the sequel trilogy. I know, very controversial answer. You're not going to hear anybody else say that. But while you're down there, leave a like. If you're not one of those people that automatically likes a video when you start watching it, please leave a like. I think I'm the only person that does that. And subscribe if you're new. I'm curious as to if it does that thing where the subscribe button gets animated when it detects that I'm asking you to subscribe. I'm trying out a new thing where I ask you guys to engage with the video. In all the years that I've been doing YouTube, I don't really do that. Anyway, the reason I want to talk about Star Wars today is because this year, we're getting our first Star Wars movie in 7 years in the form of The Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, I'll be honest with you right off the bat, I haven't watched Mandalorian since Season 2 ended. I didn't even watch enough of Book of Boba Fett to see The Mandalorian and Grogu again. When I saw that there was a third season of The Mandalorian with Grogu back in it, I got upset because that kind of completely undoes the ending of the second season. And I realized when the second season ended that they were going to go back on that decision anyway, because if Grogu is off training with Luke and he doesn't leave at any point, that means that Ben Solo is going to kill him when he turns evil and leaves the Jedi Order. They don't want that. I get that. So they went back on the decision like I knew they would. I didn't hear very good or positive things about The Mandalorian Season 3, so I'm kind of astonished that this movie is coming out. I don't know if this is directed by Jon Favreau. If it is, then that'll probably help to recapture a little bit of the magic from the very beginning of the show. But this is Dave Filoni's world, folks, and we're just living in it. Rada the Hutt is in this movie. We've got some real deep-rooted glup shit all going on already. But I want to talk about the public's general interest in Star Wars as a brand over the last few years, because like I said, the last Star Wars film came out 7 years ago. Now that's not to say that there's been nothing going on Star Wars related in that time. There's been a few video games, plenty of television shows, a lot of shows. Some good, some not. I really like Star Wars Visions. I hear great things about Andor. I watched Obi-Wan Kenobi. I watched like an episode of Ahsoka. I don't know. I hear things back and forth about a lot of the shows. Obviously didn't hear very good things about The Acolyte. I'm not here to talk about the quality of those shows because I didn't really watch any of them. Didn't watch Bad Batch. Didn't watch the final season of Rebels or Clone Wars. Didn't watch Tales of the Jedi, or what's the other one? Skeleton Crew, none of that stuff, because I kind of feel as though Star Wars is better off when we're not being inundated with content, when there's not 4 or 5 projects coming out in a year. Similarly to how I was saying that the MCU kind of struggled in 2021 when there were 6 shows and 4 movies all coming out in 1 year, and, you know, only one of those things was a real runaway hit, and that was Spider-Man. Spider-Man's always going to be a runaway hit. But, I think that the reason they've focused so much on television and video games lately is because they're scared of the big screen when it comes to Star Wars. I mean, look at what we do have coming to the big screen. The Mandalorian and Grogu, which is basically the 4th season of the show, and the Starfighter movie coming out next year, directed by Shawn Levy. If you're curious as to what Shawn Levy has directed, you'd be pleased to know that he made Real Steel. And then your heart will crack in half when you find out he made Free Guy, and Deadpool and Wolverine, and that he worked very heavily on Stranger Things Season 5. Yeah, Star Wars is in good hands. But you may notice that neither of those movies has an episode number. Episode 9 came out in 2019. Where is Episode 10? Are we ever going to do an Episode 10? There's been talks about doing a trilogy about the High Republic era directed by Taika Waititi. DB and Weiss from Game of Thrones were supposed to be doing Star Wars movies. Rian Johnson was supposed to be getting a trilogy. But as that sequel trilogy finished, those discussions kind of faded out, and I'm actually curious as to whether or not those are still happening. Pardon the interruption, it's your boy Toxic Boyo, and I wanted to take a brief moment to let you know about the Toxic Touch Productions Patreon. I'm not currently monetized on YouTube, but I still want to bring you the best content that I possibly can. I want to make those videos that you love, and I want them to be the best that they can be. But I need a little help. That's where you guys come in. If you want to support me directly, you can head on over to patreon.com/toxictouchproductions or click the link in the description or the pinned comment. For even just $5 a month, you can get your name included in the credits at the end of the video, gain access to exclusive channels on the Discord, and you get specialized merch at no extra cost. It only gets better as the tiers go higher. Go check it out. Thanks for listening and thanks for supporting my dreams. Now let's get back to the video. Yeah, so it looks like the only one of those things that might still be happening is the Taika Waititi Star Wars project, which was announced back in 2020 and still has pretty much no development made on it since then, but it hasn't been canceled yet. But again, none of that is episode 10. There was discussion about Rey coming back, discussion about Finn coming back, but nothing concrete as of yet. And it's not crazy to be a little concerned because we're approaching the length of time that passed between episodes 3 and 7 releasing. And 3 was intended to be the last Star Wars movie because the story was over. And the passage of time between episodes 6 and 1 is obviously longer, but still. There not being anything announced by this point is a little concerning. I'm not gonna sit here and say that, oh yeah, they should be intimidated. It's a good thing that they seem scared to move forward with an episode 10. That seems like I'm endorsing the disgusting, pitiful behavior that I see from Star Wars fans every time something comes out. I mean, if you saw the way people treated Moses Ingram when the Obi-Wan Kenobi show came out, then you know what I'm talking about. I won't sit here and tell you that I think that Star Wars has been, you know, sunshine and rainbows for the last 10 years. I know that it's got problems, and those problems run deep. But I'm also not going to say that it's ever acceptable to harass actors, or to do any of the stuff that we've really seen from the majority of people, like that Star Wars Girl, or Star Wars Theory, or the Critical Drinker, or Geeks and Gamers for the last decade. If anything, if I were to say that it's a good thing that Disney and Lucasfilm seem hesitant to move forward with an episode 10, it's because I think that they understand that they need to be. That they need to be more deliberate, and more intentional, and more careful, and more calculated when they approach this next major Star Wars saga trilogy. One of the biggest mistakes that they made from the outset with episode 7 that kind of set the sequel trilogy up for failure was their commitment to monetizing nostalgia. Say what you will about The Force Awakens, but that movie banks on how much you love A New Hope. And the interesting thing about how much they were banking on nostalgia is that they were acting as though the prequel trilogy doesn't have fans, as though it's universally agreed upon as being terrible. Because it's like, oh, we filmed in Tunisia, like they did for episode 4. We've got all these practical effects like they did in episode 4, even though I think the Phantom Menace still has the most practical effects in any of the main Star Wars films. But we've got a new Death Star like in episode 4. The Millennium Falcon is back like in episode 4. Luke, Han, and Leia and Chewie are back like in episode 4. Well, the prequel trilogy is more recent, you know? So, and the last movie was 10 years ago, so we're at a point in time now where fans of the prequel trilogy can feel nostalgic too. But we're already isolating parts of Star Wars that we treat as though they matter or are relevant, and that's a bad idea from the outset. You're gonna alienate parts of your fan base for no good reason other than you think this is gonna make you more money. So like I said, they got back as many original actors as they could. Peter Mayhew, Anthony Daniels, Han Solo, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace. You know, Mark Hamill. They got everybody back that they were able to, really. But the thing is, that is in direct conflict with the story that they're trying to tell, because they wanted to line it up with roughly the same passage of time that there was between the release of Return of the Jedi and the release of The Force Awakens, which is, 32 years. So you mean to tell me that inside of 32 years, Luke Skywalker rebuilt the Jedi Order to some degree? The Republic retook the galaxy. The Empire faded to dust, but only to a degree where Luke was convinced that they were gone. This guy Snoke was sitting in the background the whole time and rebuilt the Empire into the First Order, and it just popped back up? Because this thing popped up recently. This was a while even after Ben Solo left Luke's new Jedi Academy. But even with that, they make it clear that the stormtroopers are not clones like they were at the very beginning of the Empire's reign, and they're also not enlisted volunteers like the army would have. It's also not a draft like the army would have had during the Vietnam War. They basically take babies, they take children, and they indoctrinate them at a very young age, and they raise them up in the ways of the Empire, and that's how they get their stormtroopers. Finn is in his early to mid-20s, so this would have happened while Luke was around 40, still pretty much in his physical prime. We're talking about Jedi after all, they don't exactly age like normal people do. Luke was probably also searching the galaxy for children who showed potential and could become Jedi, so how would he not have heard anything about this? How would he have not detected it? How would he have not sensed anything like it? Well, the Jedi Order didn't notice Palpatine right under their nose. Snoke's not Palpatine. We actually know that Snoke's not Palpatine. So those feats aren't exactly comparable. Palpatine also took advantage of the fact that the Jedi had gotten lazy and comfortable in their position, basically running the government. So there were a lot of contributing factors to that. Luke didn't have to deal with any of that when it came to Snoke. He could have and should have known something was up. It seemed like he did know something was up if Ben went straight to Snoke after what happened. Point is, the passage of time does not allow for the story that they're trying to tell you to be told. It hasn't been long enough for Rey and for other people to believe that the Jedi are a myth. It hasn't been long enough for people to forget the name Luke Skywalker and Emperor Palpatine. It hasn't been long enough for these things to become legend. You either want to, tell me that the events that we saw in the original trilogy happened so long ago that they have been forgotten by the general public, or you want to stuff a bunch of nostalgia in my face and just hope that I'll go along with whatever you're saying. You really can't have it both ways. And another big problem of the sequel trilogy that everyone seems to agree on is that there was no plan. Each movie in the prequel or in the sequel trilogy feels as though it was made as a direct response to the last one. And what you're left with is a trilogy that's at war with itself and kind of punishes you for rewatching the movies, at least if you're watching them back to back. I find there to be no sense of satisfaction or reward at the end of the experience. Each movie is either an apology or an indictment regarding the previous one, and I think that that's really disappointing. For all of the faults of the prequel trilogy, at least George Lucas knew what story he wanted to tell. There was a little bit of time wasted getting there. If we're being completely honest, hardly anything that happens in The Phantom Menace matters for the rest of the trilogy because there's a 10-year time skip after The Phantom Menace. You could put what happened to Obi-Wan in the title crawl of Attack of the Clones. The prequel trilogy could have been Attack of the Clones, The Clone Wars, Revenge of the Sith. And I think that would have been much tighter. But whatever, I don't make the rules. What we got there is still much better than what we ended up getting with Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, because directors are getting fired, people clearly weren't having conversations about where they wanted the stories to go, They were disagreeing with each other after the films came out, and that's how you end up with a trilogy that takes, 7.5 hours to end up saying not much at all. And if I'm being completely honest, I do appreciate Star Wars content that does not involve the Jedi or the Sith. It makes the world of Star Wars feel much larger, feel much more lived in. Obviously, we like seeing the cool Jedi flips and the Sith lightning. All that stuff is very entertaining and very exciting to watch. But I also appreciate something like Rogue One. Even though Darth Vader's in it, it's not a story about the Sith or about the Jedi. Darth Vader is in it as a consequence of being, the enforcer of the will of the Galactic Empire. The movie is about the Galactic Empire. He's going to be in it if he's available. A movie like Mandalorian and Grogu, as long as no Jedi or Sith show up in it, could be entertaining. Starfighter, same thing. I want stories that are smaller scale, more intimate. That's what I'm told Andor gives, but I'm kind of Star Wars'd out. I know. Why am I talking about it if I no longer have as much passion for the franchise as I once did? Well, it's because I no longer have as much passion for the franchise as I once did. I want to see it get back on track. I want to see it excel. I want to see it be huge and, universally loved like it once was decades ago. And so I think that when it does come time to make it episode 10, because they have to, right? There's no way that they don't eventually get around to doing that. This next trilogy, or maybe that's one of the problems in itself. Maybe we're too trilogy brained. Maybe we just take it one film at a time. You can make an episode 10, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like, okay, this is our 3-picture plan. We can look at each film as an individual. We can put time skips, we can put generations in between them. We can do prequels again. We can go back before episode 1. We can talk about the High Republic. We can talk about the Old Republic. We can talk about the age where there were 1,000 Sith, things like that. But whatever it is, you have to be deliberate and intentional about it. You can't just start freestyling in the middle. If you want to develop a trilogy, you need to iron those details out from the outset. Before you start filming on your first movie, you need to have a script for that first movie, a script for the second one, and an outline for the third one. Before you say action on day 1, you need to have it worked out. You need to have it understood. George Lucas had that for the prequel trilogy. I'm not going to say that he had it for the original trilogy because it obviously wasn't planned to be a trilogy. It wasn't called Star Wars Episode 4 when that movie first came out. It was called Star Wars. I'm not stupid. But 50 years have gone by. We're looking at things a little differently now. I think that the best thing that they can do is set Episode 10 hundreds of years into the future. I don't want to hear the name Skywalker or Palpatine or Solo or any of it. I don't want to hear Calrissian or Dameron or Rey or any of that. Whole new story. The Skywalker saga is over. Every Skywalker is dead. Unfortunately, every single one of them is dead. We're done. It's time to move on. Ben Solo doesn't have any kids. The Skywalker bloodline is over. We can have a whole new Jedi Order with a new Jedi philosophy, because there were things in the sequel trilogy that I did like on a conceptual level. Luke being disenfranchised by the Jedi's nature to destroy themselves, I can completely get behind that. What I can't get behind is the idea that even though Luke can talk to Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Yoda, that he made the exact same mistakes that the Jedi Council of yesteryear made. Why didn't he ever ask them for advice? Why didn't he set up the Jedi Academy to be different than the Jedi of old? Why did he even consider killing his nephew just because there was a touch of darkness in his heart? Mind you, this is the same guy that refused to fight his father, who killed billions of people because he knew there was still some good left in there. I don't know. This isn't meant to be a rant about how the sequel trilogy butchered my favorite characters. Like I said, this is meant to be a discussion about the future of Star Wars and where things could be going and what there might be to be excited about. I mean, obviously, people are gonna go see a movie called Star Wars Episode 10. But like I did say towards the beginning of the video, the public doesn't really have as much interest in Star Wars as they once did. I'm looking at YouTube right now. The most recent trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu has 10 million views. That's in 8 days. That might sound very impressive. Well, the previous trailer for The Mandalorian and Grogu has 12 million views in 5 months. So 1 week versus 20 weeks. Very, very similar numbers. Now, if we're to look at Avengers Doomsday, we've got minute-long teasers that give pretty much no context regarding anything. The X-Men teaser, 17 million views in a month. The Thor teaser, 18 million views in a month. The Steve Rogers teaser, 19 million views in 2 months. The Avengers Doomsday Now in Production video that's just got chairs and Robert Downey Jr., 19 million views in 10 months. People are much more interested in the 5th Avengers movie than they are in the first Star Wars movie in the same amount of time. It's been 7 years since Endgame, 7 years since Rise of Skywalker. And if we're being honest, people have been generally much more negative towards Marvel content that's come out since then than they have towards Star Wars content. Most Star Wars content that's come out, outside of the realm of Twitter, has been well received. Marvel, not so much. Yet people are still much more interested in seeing Avengers Doomsday than The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I think that's probably going to trickle down towards Starfighter as well. You could say, well, Starfighter's got star power behind it. It's got Ryan Gosling. Mandalorian and Grogu's got Pedro Pascal. He's a star. Now, does he have as much star power now as he did 2 or 3 years ago? Maybe not. But still, you would think that he could get asses in seats, or at least eyes on the trailer. I think that this is going to be the second Star Wars movie since the Disney era began that fails to crack $1 billion after the Han Solo film. And I honestly think that this movie is going to make less than Han Solo. I'm not excited by that. Just because it's a movie that I'm not interested in doesn't mean that I want to see it fail. It's from a franchise that I love. I want to see it do well. But I don't know. I think that Star Wars has burnt all of its goodwill, and that's heartbreaking to me. And I have a feeling that it is for a lot of you guys too. Star Wars is a franchise that means a lot to me, and it always has. And I just want to see it bring joy to people again. Star Wars was something, along with Harry Potter and with the Avengers, that at different points in time has brought so many people together. And now 2 of those things have fallen by the wayside, and we'll see if Avengers can still do it. It's looking like the most likely option out of those 3 to do it again. But I don't know, that's just my random, disjointed, unscripted thoughts on Star Wars, the state of it, the future of it, and what's to come. If you agree or disagree with anything that I said in this video in particular, please let me know in the comments. Like I said, subscribe if you're new, if you're a Star Wars fan. I've definitely got more Star Wars related content coming down the pipeline. And we can be friends. Actually, no, I won't say that we can be friends because that's bad. That's how parasocial relationships start. I've had some bad experiences with that, even as a channel of my size. I'm gonna go now.